very it sounds very grand to say that I'm trying to resolve the problems of the world, but I mean, is that everybody's aspirations really to try and address? But yes, I believe that working across social science disciplinary boundaries, so I don't only look at things from a political perspective, is the best way to help us to actually address what's happening around the world. And that's what's brought me to share with you today this topic of justice, which is, as we'll see, a topic that's of concern to all different social science disciplines, whether that's economics, sociology, politics, even geography has something to say about this concept of justice. So before I kick off with some insights into the concept of justice, I wanted to know if you have any ideas about what justice means or what justice is. So feel free to unmute your microphones and share some ideas, or pop an idea into the chat if you've got one. Okay, Louise thinks laws. We'll see about that. I can see some others typing. I'll just wait a moment. Everyone standing equally in the eyes of the law. So a bit of a law theme going on with some of these. Justice, equality, and fairness. Oh, interesting. We might come back to some of those concepts in a moment, some of those ideas around equality and fairness. There's actually different ways of thinking about justice. So Aristotle, a Greek philosopher from very long time ago, he said there's actually two types of justice, or two different ways of thinking about justice. And I think those of you who've mentioned things around law are probably thinking about commutative justice, which is about, you know, treating other people how they deserve to be treated based on how they've treated others. So it's about looking at how people are behaving towards each other and reacting to them accordingly. And that's it normally conjures up some ideas of punishments, or, you know, holding people accountable for their actions. And that's often the type of justice when we're talking about when we're thinking about criminal justice and laws. But there's another type of justice, and that's distributive justice. And that's what we're going to focus on today. And distributive justice is to do with the best way of distributing goods. So that could be money, resources in terms of food or land, or even knowledge and skills and things like that within a community. So we've got different ways of thinking about justice, and we're going to focus on that distributive justice. So sometimes referred to as economic justice or social justice. Okay, this distributive justice that we're going to focus on. And its main concern is this question: what is the just and fair? So one of you mentioned fairness. That's really key, a really key idea related to justice. What is the just and fair distribution of goods and resources within society? So how should things be shared out, basically? Now, this idea of distributive justice is really key, as I said, across a number of different social science disciplines. So it's an important topic in politics and political philosophy, and economics, and loads of other social science disciplines are concerned with this idea about how do we distribute the resources that exist in our society. So I just wanted to give you a little summary there of what the politics discipline is about. It's all about studying power, the relationships of power between individuals and groups, different structures of power, the ideas, the actors, the people or the groups, or the states, whatever kind of actors you emphasize, and the institutions, not just in terms of our political institutions like our parliaments and our governments, but also in terms of the rules and the norms that shape how we behave, and how all of these things interplay to form this context in which we live our lives. So you can see there how this question of distributing resources is relevant to that discipline, as it can be closely related to the context, the structures in which we live, and sometimes the resource distribution is very closely aligned to the power distribution within society. Equally in economics, economics as the study of the availability of different resources. Economists believe that the availability of resources is limited. We have a limited amount of money, of skills, of land, and how we can distribute those most efficiently and manage the distribution of those. So again, you can see how that concept of justice fits into that discipline. So both of these disciplines, and others as well, are concerned with this question of distributive justice, of how or what is the most just or the most fair way to distribute goods and resources within society. But in answer to that question, there are lots of different ideas, lots of different ways that we could share things out, that we could argue are just or fair. So we're going to look at some of those ideas. So before we look at what some of our key theorists think on this question, what do you think? Have you got any instincts? What might be the best way to distribute all the goods that we have in society? So Gus, you already mentioned equality. So do you think sharing things out equally is the most just, the most fair way to carry this out? But when we're thinking about equality, we have to think about, is that equality in terms of opportunity, giving everybody the equal opportunity to access the same amount of resources? Or is it in terms of equality of outcome, in that everybody should have, at the end of the day, the same amount of resources? So we've got to dig a little bit more if we think equality is the answer here. Karl Marx very famously talked about the right way to distribute resources is from each according to his ability to each according to his need. So that suggests some amount of redistribution, that actually people should give and share out the things that they are able to, and they should share them with people who need them. So, you might think about some systems of taxation, and how if the more money you earn, the more you should contribute in terms of taxes, which would then be distributed in terms of services and welfare to people who are less well off. And that's a key idea here. Or could it be something different? There is no right or wrong answer to these questions. That's why we're looking at them. That's the nature of social science. You don't get right and wrong answers. You just have different ideas that it's then the responsibility to debate and discuss and decide what you think. So do you have any thoughts on this that you'd like to share at this point? What do you think? See someone typing, so we'll just give them a chance to share what they think. As I say, in social science, there's no right or wrong answers. There's just different positions, different perspectives, different ideas. Okay. Some interest in the idea of taxation, which we might come back to. We're going to look at some different positions on that. We've got an idea about equality of opportunity, and the distribution of resources to be based on individuals' contribution to society, and that individuals have to deserve some of the resource. That's very interesting. Just give 30 more seconds for any other contributions. And then we'll have a look at what some of our key thinkers in this area have argued. The idea of what we deserve is really an interesting one and quite key to this debate. Yes, that's a good point about taxation, that, you know, no matter what kind of systems of taxation exist, there are often loopholes, which mean that no matter how hard we might be trying to distribute our resources in a fair and just way, there may be some who try to skirt around those, shall we say, and make the most of some of those loopholes that exist. Okay, some interesting ideas you've got, and we can be able to see how they fit in with some of the key thinkers' positions on this question. So I'm going to introduce you to two key thinkers who historically have had a very long debate on this, on exactly this question. I've got a couple of short videos to share with you as well to help illustrate it. So first off, we have John Rawls. And John Rawls wrote A Theory of Justice in the 1970s. And he started writing his theory of justice, or developing his theory of justice, on the basis of a thought experiment called the Veil of Ignorance. Okay, so I'm going to show you a short video that summarizes the idea of the veil of ignorance, so you get an idea of where Rawls was coming from when he came up with his idea of justice.
What's your blueprint for a just society? Your answer probably reflects who you are and the situation you find yourself in. If you're rich, you may well be in favor of the freedom to earn and enjoy the fruits of your efforts. If you're poor, you're likely to be more supportive of a system that redistributes wealth. Now answer the same question with this twist. You won't know what kind of a person you'll be in the society you design. What you have to do is construct it from behind a veil of ignorance. You might end up black, white, in a wheelchair, straight, gay, born into a wealthy family, or living in extreme poverty. You might enjoy knitting, rock music, opera, tiddlywinks, or cage fighting, maybe even all of these. You just don't know how you'll end up. This is the thought experiment at the heart of John Rawls's book, A Theory of Justice. He argued that from behind the veil, we'd opt for a much fairer society than we now have. There would be extensive freedom and fair equality of opportunity, but there wouldn't be extremes of high pay unless it could be shown that the poorest in society directly benefited as a result.
Okay. So what that is pointing out then is that Rawls thinks if nobody knew what their position would be in society, whether they would be rich, whether they would be poor, whether they would be disabled, what their ethnicity would be, whereabouts in the world they would live, then this is what they would come up with. Okay, so imagine, you know, maybe there's been a complete apocalypse and everything is starting right from the beginning. He thinks this is the only way that resources would be distributed in a fair way, and therefore this is what we need to strive for. So he came up with a number of principles. Now these principles, some of them are a little bit complicated to understand, but I'm going to tell you them, and then we can I'll tell you what implications they have, what this would mean in practice if this was carried out. So his first principle is called the liberty principle. And he said that each person is to have an equal right to the most extensive total system of equal basic liberties compatible with a similar system of liberties for all. Basically, everyone should have as much freedom and as many liberties as they possibly can, up until the point that it affects somebody else's liberty and freedom. So you should be free to do whatever you want, as long as you're not affecting someone else's freedom to do what they want. Okay, that's quite a liberal idea. That's very at home with the liberal ideology. Rawls's second principle, second principle is divided into two separate things. Okay, the equal opportunity principle and the difference principle. So he thinks that where inequalities might exist, okay, they should exist where everybody has an equal opportunity to access the benefit that comes from this inequality of outcome. So, for example, if there are some really well-paid jobs available in society, everyone should have equal access to those jobs, an opportunity to apply, to demonstrate that they're able to perform those jobs, to access that higher level of pay. The difference principle comes in that says that any inequalities that exist in society needs to exist to be of the benefit to the least advantage. So what this means is that if you are in a really well-paid job, you're taking home lots and lots of money, you can keep that to the point that it benefits those who have less. And this is where taxation comes in. Okay, it's a little bit difficult to understand exactly what Rawls is talking about in a theoretical sense. So let's think about what this actually looks like in practice. Okay, if we implement some of Rawls' ideas, what we would see is a very large welfare state. Okay, so that's resources that exist that are committed to providing education opportunities, healthcare opportunities, and financial opportunities to everybody. And there would be taxation. Okay, we mentioned taxation, that taxes would be collected from those who are in positions where they are earning more money, and that would be redistributed through society so that the least well-off in society benefits from it. So Rawls is thinking that if nobody knew their circumstances in the world, nobody knew what position they would be in society, this is what they would decide to do. They would decide that there should be some redistribution of resources so that everyone is benefiting. Okay, so that's Rawls. If you have any questions, we can address them later. So Rawls had this idea that we need to be redistributing wealth in society, and this is what we would do if we didn't know where we would be in society. But someone came along a little bit after Rawls and wrote a response, a reaction, and that's Robert Nozick. And he wrote Anarchy, State and Utopia. And he comes from a libertarian perspective. So a libertarian is someone who is kind of at the extreme end of the liberal ideology, where they think that our freedoms should be absolutely maximized, and any kind of government interference in what we're doing or any of our own resources should be minimized, as small as possible. So he has an example, okay, a bit of a thought experiment around basketball to get us thinking about his ideas. We can look at this and we can start thinking, how does this contrast to what Rawls was saying? Let's have a quick look at this. Hang on.
Welcome to the Essential Ideas of Robert Nozick. Many people advocate for the government redistributing income from one group of people to another. But Nozick argued that income redistribution is incompatible with a free and open society, and that it violates people's rights. Let's explore this idea with an example. Imagine a world where the people decide everyone will be paid an equal amount. One day, an amazing basketball star emerges, the greatest to ever play. Many people love basketball and willingly pay 25 cents from each ticket purchased to the basketball star to watch him play. Soon, 4 million people have all willingly paid 25 cents to watch him play. The basketball star now has an income much higher than others. The only way to maintain the income distribution of equal amounts for everyone is for the government to intervene, either by taking money away from the basketball star and giving it back to the people who paid him, or by stopping people from freely choosing to pay 25 cents to the basketball star in the first place. To achieve the government-imposed distribution of income, in this case equal income for everyone, the state has to constantly intervene to redistribute income and/or prevent certain exchanges, all of which reduce freedom. Nozick recognized that for any type of state-imposed income distribution to be sustained, the government would constantly have to interfere with people's choices and violate their rights. This insight counters many political philosophies advocating income distribution, which remains popular today. For more information on Robert Nozick, visit
Okay. So what Nozick is saying is that actually, if you start redistributing people's income, then the government or whoever is redistributing is interfering with people's freedom and their liberty and their capacity to make their own decisions about what they do in their lives, and that this is wrong, and that, you know, we need to maximize everybody's freedom and avoid any interference of the government. So in this example, and Nozick thinking about justice, he is saying that you have a right that no one can take away to your own property. And in this case, he means, you know, your money and your resources, that the government can't interfere and affect what you own and what you have. So it's emphasis on self-ownership. On the basis that what you have and what you own, you've acquired, you've got because of a process of free exchange. So in the basketball example, the people who went to watch the basketball player, they were freely able to give an extra 25 cents. They were happy to do that. They said, yes, I'm going to give you 25 cents in return for watching this basketball player. So that free exchange is important, that nobody's forcing anybody to spend something on whatever or exchange. So as long as you've had the freedom to decide where you're going to, you know, spend your money, how you're going to exchange your goods and things, you then have an absolute right to keeping what you have earned or what you've achieved. So in contrast to rules, Nozick is saying you can't redistribute money. That is not just and fair. That's affecting everybody's freedoms and everybody's liberty. So he says that rules treats people as some means to the ends of others. So someone who is achieving really well and earning lots of money, he says rules sees that person as just a way to help other people. And that's wrong for Nozick. Nozick thinks that that person who is using their talents and has got that amazing opportunity to earn more money should be able to keep the money that they have earned, and no one should interfere to take that away. So the most just and fair way to distribute resources in society is to just ensure there is a free exchange, and then whatever you acquire through that free exchange is yours to keep forever. So the implications of this, okay, just to summarize what I've already said, is that for Nozick, the just and fair way to distribute resources in society, we need to have limited government, okay, whose job it is just to make sure that everyone gets to keep their own resources. So to guarding people's property rights, overseeing any contracts where any of those are made to ensure the free exchange. The government should not be concerned with redistributing goods and resources. They should keep out of that because that affects people's liberty. The freedom of exchange is key, as I said. So if you come to me and say, I'm going to give you a penny and I agree, yes, if you give me a penny, I'm going to give you £10 in return, and we make that free exchange, then you have the absolute right to retain that £10 that I've given you. So freedom of the markets, no interference of the government in trading and the buying and selling of any goods or services. And importantly, no taxation. So very different to Rawls, no taxes for Nozick, because taxes, he thinks, amounts to extracting forced labour from those people who are required to pay taxes. So he thinks if you work hard and earn a lot of money, to then give some of that over in taxes is a way of kind of being enslaved by the government to help other people out. So you can see this contrasting debate between these two key thinkers, and there is no resolution to any of this. However, there has been some responses, some other theorists, some other ideas that have come through. I just wanted to highlight a couple of those to you now and suggest that if you're interested in this topic, something that you might want to go away and find out a bit more about. So Cohen has responded to Nozick and said, well, yes, we see some of your ideas about freedom and things. However, the idea of a free exchange is not realistic. There is never a free exchange of goods, completely free exchange. It doesn't happen. He also thinks that Nozick's position rests on overstating or overemphasizing the contribution that each individual makes to their own wealth. So it's not always that it is, the most skilled or the most talented person that has the most. There are many different factors that affect the distribution of resources. It could be down to, where you live, where you were born, whether you have inherited a lot of money from some relatives. It's not always the case, Cohen says, that the people with the most skills, the free exchanges and everything that they make and the opportunities that they make the most of in their life, have the most resources. So it doesn't work like that. So Nozick is a bit off the mark. He's a bit mistaken here. Another idea which is really gaining traction and getting more and more popular, and perhaps you've heard of it over the last 10 to 20 years, comes from the left-leaning libertarians, whereas Nozick is a more right, slightly more right-leaning libertarian. The left libertarians, such as Philippe Van Parijs, they've come up with an idea of the universal basic income. You may have heard of this. And this idea is that the best way to distribute resources in society is just to unconditionally provide an income to every adult citizen. And then it would be then free for them to exchange and to use that however they see fit. But actually this unconditional universal basic income for everybody is going to address many of the issues facing society. It's going to address poverty, it's going to address educational inequality, it's going to address healthcare inequality, all of these different things. And this idea has been trialled in many places around the world over the last few years, in parts of Finland, South Korea, California, Kenya, Wales, Iran, Alaska, Brazil, Spain, India, and the majority of the places where it's been trialled that I've read about report some positive outcomes from this. So it's possible that this might be a way of just and fair way of distributing resources in society that has some positive impact. So if that's something you're interested in, if you want to find out more, I've put there that you could go away and do a bit of online research to find out more about this idea and whether you think it's a just and fair way to distribute resources in society. You mentioned right at the beginning, someone said about equality, okay, and this is kind of taking equality really to its limits and saying, let's just give everybody an equal amount of money and see what happens.